In my latest class on Skillshare.com, I teach a low-cost approach to building your Shopify storefront without hiring a specialist designer or developer using the native Shopify online store editor. But before we can actually start to build our Shopify website, we need to start with our brand identity. As I spoke about in my last video, there are many things that go into building a website. Ideally, you'd have a team of specialists that include a web designer and a web developer. And maybe that web designer is also someone that can help you to design your brand. But if you're operating on a budget, let me show you how we can leverage AI to come up with a brand identity for us. In this video, I'm going to use something called Lovart, a tool that describes itself as your AI design partner. And using this tool, we can generate all the brand assets we need to start populating our Shopify website with content. Let's get started. All right, so here I am on the homepage of Lovart as a logged in user. In the top right, you can see the amount of credits that I have left, which is 1,442. I did have to pay for a package of credits, but I think the pricing is pretty reasonable if we go over to here. If you do annual, you get 50% off or up to 50% off. But all you need for this video, if you wanted to follow along and do the exact same as me, is switch over to monthly and just pay for 1 month of starter. This will give you 2,000 credits, and that should be more than enough to generate a single brand. I don't think you need to go basic, pro, or ultimate unless you're generating a lot of images. Maybe you're going to keep your subscription with Lovart over the life of your brand and use this tool to help you generate brand assets well into the future. If so, you can keep subscribed. But for me, all I needed was 1 month at $19 to get that 2,000 credits. And that's all required for the process we're going to cover in this video. Okay, so you might already have a brand name. You should definitely know what you're going to sell and who you're going to sell it to. But if you don't even have a brand name yet, you can head over to your favorite LLM, which for me is going to be Gemini. I like to use different LLMs for different purposes. For the more creative stuff, I prefer Gemini, but feel free to use whatever LLM you prefer, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude. You'll get similar results, I'm sure, by using any of them. Okay, but I like Gemini for creative stuff. And what I'm going to do is create a prompt to ask the LLM to generate me a brand name. So I'm going to say, what's a good brand name for a, and then here you can put in what you're actually selling. So I'm going to be selling matcha powder. And if you're selling on Shopify, you're probably predominantly selling online. So I'm going to put that in. I'm going to say that sells predominantly online. And I'm also going to put in some information about the target market that this brand name should appeal to. So one of the groups where I've noticed matcha is particularly popular is girls that do yoga and Pilates. I'm going to use that as my target market. So I'm going to say it should appeal to yuppie Pilates / yoga girls. And let's hit enter and see what names Gemini comes up with. So with a prompt like this, it should understand the vibe I'm going for. And then we just need to look at all the names and see which one resonates with us. This is obviously a subjective process, and it might take some time and a few iterations, a few bits of feedback to Gemini to get a name that actually resonates with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through these and see which ones stand out to me. Prana powder, don't mind that. Club matcha, reform. Reform sounds too much like a Pilates class. I don't want it to sound like a yoga or Pilates brand, but I just want it to appeal to that sort of target market. Former is good, and I like prana. Okay. Let's see if we can get it to do a better one. So I'm going to say, I like former matcha and prana powder, but I would ideally like a brand name that is one word, that makes sense as one word. Okay, let's see what it comes back with. Forma, align, reform, isome, prana, asana. Asana just sounds too much like yoga to me. Loom. I do like the name prana powder because it does give off that yoga vibe, but also has that alliteration of the two P's. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to move it over to Lovart, and I'm going to ask Lovart to create a matcha brand identity for, and this is where I paste in my business name, and then I'm just going to copy, it should appeal to the same target market. Okay, so the format here is create a whatever it is you sell brand identity for whatever it is your business name is. It should appeal to whatever your target market is. All right, so let's hit enter and see what Lovart comes back with. So Lovart's going to think about it, and then it's going to probably trigger Nano Banana to generate some images for us. And then it puts it over here in this canvas for us. I'm going to fast forward through a lot of these parts because it does take time to generate these images. AI is not instant, so I will fast forward through some of this. But as you can see, it is triggering Nano Banana on the back end, which is a really good image generation model from Google. And then we'll take a look at what it comes back with when it finishes. All right, and now after about, does it say how long it was? It had the timer there before, but about 2 minutes it took to generate this brand. As you can see, it generated a logo and then it generated a different logo over here. So we really need to dial in on the logo, but this gives us a little bit of a starting point, gives us some ideas, some elements that we perhaps want to use and some that we don't want to use. Let's dial in on the logo first, and let's see from these logo variations. I kind of like that with the O being a bit of a leaf. We have the brand mark here. I don't mind the brand mark, but the font, we can actually click on one of the images that comes back and that'll tag it right here in the chat box. So what I'm going to do is I like the logo mark, but the font is too basic and I don't like the P and D letters being a different color. I'd also like the logo mark and brand name to be on the same line. Perhaps the word powder can be smaller. All right, so obviously this is a little bit of a subjective process. You will have your preferences, obviously, that you're going to put into this AI. But the result that we're looking for is we want to generate, number one, a logo. We want our color scheme and we want our typography so that we can put that into our Shopify store. And we also want some images as well, some image assets that we can use throughout our website as well. So there might be a little bit of back and forth depending on how fussy you are and your subjective preferences, but this right here is the process. All right, so it's taken my feedback and it's given me this, which I actually like. I think that that's a good logo. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and say, lock in this as the brand's logo. Make sure all images generated after this one follow this logo. Okay. So as it says here, it responds with, I'll lock in this as the logo of the brand and all future designs will follow this logo consistently. It might mess up. That might not be 100% true, but we can always click back to this logo and remind it if it does mess up. All right, so now that I've got my logo, I'm going to create a new folder to hold all of my brand identity stuff for this new brand. So it's going to be Prana Powder. And then I'm going to now download this image into that folder. So I'm going to call it, actually, I'll just leave it like that. And then what I'm going to do is we could ask Lovart to do this, but for some reason I've tried this in Gemini and Lovart, and in my experience, it does a terrible job when you try and get the logo to be cropped and for the background to be removed so that it's transparent. So we're just going to do that with a couple of free tools ourselves. First of all, we're going to want to open up this. I use a Mac, so I'm going to use the free app preview. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down to only the part of the image where the logo actually appears. All right, so I'm going to cut out all of this empty space around the image. So I'm going to hit crop and I'm going to tighten this up even more, because when we put this logo in our website, we don't want our spacing to be determined by the image. We want to determine our own spacing. So I'm going to get this as tight as possible. It doesn't need to be incredibly pixel perfect, but just get this as tight as possible. And then if we want some spacing around that on our Shopify website, we can do it ourselves. So that will handle the cropping. And then I will go to a simple website called remove.bg. I believe this is from the app Canva. Great app, by the way, if you want to do graphic design. As you can see here, you can click edit in Canva, but we don't even need to do that. We just upload the photo. It removes the background. We do need to pay to get higher dimensions, but 800 to 312 should be enough. All right, so I'm gonna call this logo transparent background. Okay, now let's open that up and we can see here, it's got the transparent background. If we look at it really big like this, you can see it looks a little bit dirty, but that shouldn't be a problem once we use it maximum 300 pixels wide in a Shopify store. Okay, so we've got our logo now, and what I want now is our colors. So we can look up here to what colors it came up with here. It just gave us 3 different colors. What about here? We've got our color palette here, okay. We can generally trust the color palette that comes back from Lovart. The only problem is sometimes there can be issues with contrast, in the sense that when we're putting in these colors into our Shopify store, we don't actually know which colors go well with other colors in terms of contrast. That's why I like to use some of the examples over here. For example, we can see that this text color has a nice contrast with the background here. Same thing over here. We can actually test this with a tool like the Coolers, or however you pronounce it, contrast checker. So here you can see you can input 2 colors together, and if I make it hard to read like this, you can see that there's an actual number attributed to that contrast. But if I put this up to this color right here, you can see the text is very clear against the background because the contrast rating is high. And this is based on something called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. All right, so if you are generating color palettes and certain colors are not working together, you can adjust them here until you get to a green contrast score. But this is a little bit of a hack looking at an example of already good contrast. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on this frame right here, and I'm gonna click edit elements. And what that is going to do is break this single image into multiple elements that we can look at. All right, so after a couple of minutes, you can see that this is now broken down, and we even have the font names. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use the color here as one of the colors in my palette, and I can use that for text. And then I want to use this background color as well. I don't believe that it's telling me what that is, but if I click on that image and I ask Lovart, it should be able to tell me. Please tell me what color the background is of this image. All right, so it's gonna analyze the image, and it's come back with F6 F3ED. So now we have a total of 5 colors to work with. We've got this one, the text color. We've got this faded background color, off-white. And then we've got this natural beige, matcha green, and white. And we can see that that's working just from this frame. We can see that these colors work quite nicely together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask Lovart to create a color palette with these colors. Okay, please create me a color scale with, let's just copy the hex code of this. We can actually copy parts of the image with text now, which is good. And this final one right here, the natural beige. Oh, and then also white, which is just straight up Fs. I think there's 6 of them. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now it should understand that I want it to generate an image, but we don't necessarily need to generate an image. This is just for us to look at all the images on a single frame, but we at least know now what our colors are, and we can put that into our Shopify store. So while it's doing that, I'm going to create a text document. On Mac, there's an app called Text Edit, but on Windows, it's obviously going to be a different program. Can't remember from my Windows days what the standard text document file is called. I think it's Notepad or something. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in here color palette. I'm alternating between the different spellings of color in this video. Excuse me for that. Some of you guys are probably American. Some of you are British or Australian like myself. And then we can put in our colors here. And then we probably want to label them as well. So the first one was the text color, wasn't it? Text color. I'm going to keep these names consistent. Text color, background color, and then we'll say primary accent color. What can we call the soft beige? Actually, it's given us names right here. So that's actually pretty nice. I don't know why I put 2024 in there. It's definitely not 2024 at the time of recording. And then the other thing that I've done here is I've put in the D's as lowercase just to keep that consistent. I'll change that. And then I'll rename this to the color names that it's given me. Dark green, which I think is so dark, it's not really even green at this point. Off-white, and then they called this one matcha green. This one soft beige, and then of course just pure white. Okay. All right. So let me just ask for it to remove the text at the bottom with the date, the wrong year, let's say. Okay. Now the real test of whether these colors are going to work is when we actually put them on our Shopify store. So I'll get to that at the end of the video, but first I want to generate the typography. And ideally, so that we don't have to install custom fonts into our Shopify store, we are going to want to choose from the list of Shopify native fonts. There's over 300 of them. I've got them in a document here, which I'll link below. As you can see here, this is the list of Shopify native fonts. You can find this on the documentation. I just copied from the documentation and then used AI to get rid of all the other information. But now we just have a list of 300 names of fonts. So let's see what Lovart chose in terms of fonts. We can see our color palette has now come back without that silly text. So I'm going to download that into our folder. Okay, and now for the typography, I'm going to look at what it said up here. So it hasn't actually given us a name, but from our edit elements version, we can see that the main font is Roboto. I believe that is a font inside of here. So if we search for Roboto, yes, we can see there's different types of Roboto in the list. And we don't really have a body font determined. So typically we want two different fonts, two that go together. So one for the heading and one for the body. You can see here that the logo kind of comes from Roboto, but yes, we definitely want two different fonts, one for heading and one for body. This is pretty standard in web design. It's always two fonts, one for the heading and one for the body. So let's ask Lovart to generate that for us. Please come up with a heading and body font. They should be two different fonts, but complement and go well with each other. All right. Okay, so it's showing me a demo of the two fonts together. It's not telling me the fonts in the graphic itself, but it's telling me over here, elegant serif font and clean sans serif font. Okay. All right, well, it hasn't told me the exact font, so that's messed up a little bit. I'm gonna use my list here now so that it generates me actual fonts from this list. If you're happy to install custom fonts in your Shopify site, it is a bit of a pain in the ass, but you can do it if you want. So this step is optional, and I'll say, please provide specific font family names. Please select only from this list. All right, let's see if it gets it right now. Okay, so it suggested Playfair Display and Inter. I'm not sure if it's actually the font used up here. So let me click Edit Elements because I don't fully trust the AI. I want to make sure that this is actually Playfair Display and Inter, because sometimes you can get fonts that the AI thinks goes well together, but it doesn't actually once you put it on the website. All right, so yep, this one is Playfair and this one is Inter. Inter is a super popular modern font these days. Now, to verify that all of this works well together in actual practice, I'm going to open up my Shopify store. As you can see here, this is basically a brand new store and it has Horizon installed on it by default. If I click Edit Theme here, I can start to add in aspects of our brand that we have already come up with. So if I go to theme settings, it's all going to depend on the theme. This is specifically for Horizon, but there should be some heavy overlap between the different themes. As you can see in the first set of menus here, I can add in my logo. And as you can see, it's going to bring in the logo from the brand settings. So I can either just replace this with my logo or go into the brand settings and add in the logo. The central brand settings of your store allows you to add in a logo and some colors in a centralized location. But where it fails is once we get to the colors, these colors in the color schemes aren't going to line up perfectly with the color names in the brand settings. So I'm just going to skip the part where we load this into the brand settings. I'm just going to replace this. As you can see here, I'm just going to select an image, and I've already uploaded it right here, Prana Powder. That's going to load it into my header. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, 60 pixels in height. Maybe that's a little bit too big. Let's go down to 50 pixels in height. All right, that's a bit better. And then I can go to my colors or typography next. Let's do our typography first. And you can see that our body text is already Inter, so we don't need to make any changes here. We're just going to go into our heading font and put in Playfair Display. Here we go, Playfair Display. And we can choose from different weights here. As we saw over here, the heading font was in capitals. So we might want to set that as a setting within our theme as well. Make all our headings uppercase. So heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, depends on your preferences, but I think that looks okay. Now let's test out our brand colors. So I'll show you how to load that into your theme right now. If you're using a modern theme, you should have color schemes. And so what you can do is you can add a new scheme, and then you get all of these different colors, which looks like a lot of different color settings, but a lot of them are the same color used across multiple settings. So we don't need to come up with that many different colors. A lot of these will be the same. And in order to see this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over to a default page. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go to the page here and change the color scheme to, actually we need to create the color scheme first, and then we can edit it on the fly. Call it color scheme 10. Oh, I think I already created a color scheme 9. That's all right. We can go in here, choose either color scheme 9 or color scheme 10. I'm going to choose 10, and then I'm going to go over to here and let's dial in our settings. So I'm going to bring back that text file right here. And if you remember, this dark green was what was used for the text, and this off-white was used for the background. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take the background color and just replace all the hard white colors here with our off-white color. So basically anywhere where there's white, I'm going to replace it with our sort of off-white that we use in our brand. And then for all text colors, I'm going to take this dark green, which is so dark it's not really even a green in my opinion, but we're going to go over and basically for anywhere where there's blacks right here, we're going to put in sort of our off black color. All right, you can play around with this. Obviously, design is a little bit subjective, but we can at least see here how it's going to look on the site. And for our button here, we want it to stand out a little bit more. So maybe we want to use the main brand color, which is the matcha green right here. So we can take this matcha green and put it here, test that out. And I like the look of the button with this matcha green, makes it stand out. So that's a pretty good accent color. All right. So I think the typography and the colors, they work quite well in unison with the logo on our website. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize all of this. Actually, I might just hit save on that. And then I'm going to try and summarize this into one single image. Okay. So I'm going to say something along the lines of create for me a brand identity card that includes the logo, the color scheme or color palette, I should say, and the fonts used for headings and body text. Okay, and Lovart has failed the assignment. It's given us some weird looking color palette and it's like folded here. When I did this the first time, it worked really well, but it hasn't really worked so well this time. We can actually jump into Photoshop and create it ourselves. I like this part right here, the typography part. Maybe we can break this down into multiple elements. Let's see if we can actually create our own sort of card here. Set the background color to the same background color as here. Tell this right here to edit elements so that it splits it up. Wait for that to finish. Okay, so that's put it on top of our square that we created over here. So I'm going to move that over and then we should be able to, oh, it hasn't broken up the whole brand identity card into editable elements, unfortunately. I'm going to have to click on this again and then click edit elements again. Okay, now it allows me to edit the typography. So I'm going to take this part right here, which Lovart got right, and I'm going to move that over to here, make that bigger, align that to the center. Then I'm going to take the color palette that it generated for me over here. Again, I'm going to hit edit elements to break that into components that I can then bring into my card down the bottom. Okay, that's good. It's broken it into, it hasn't actually broken this part into different colors. So I'm going to have to click edit elements again. Lovart is playing up today. You get really mixed results with AI no matter what the tool is, whether it's Lovart or Gemini or ChatGPT, results definitely vary. So, okay, now I've got my rectangles here. So I'm gonna take them, cut them, paste them down here above the typography. Gonna take the words brand color palette and these color names. All right, so I'm gonna put that here above the colors and then move these into position. Obviously I need a bit more space. So I'm gonna move this up, align these with the actual rectangles. All right, and now we just need to bring in our logo. So actually this one has all the space around it and it's not cropped and it's not transparent. So what I'm gonna do is hopefully I can upload a file here. Try adding in our logo transparent background. Let's see if I can drag and drop in this program. Looks like I can. Perfect. All right. So I think that's around the center. And so I can just make this card a little bit bigger, give the elements space to breathe, grab all of this, bring it down to here, grab the brand color palette and all the elements, bring them down. And then now you can see I've got a single graphic here with all my main brand elements. Actually, it's not getting the alignment of the logo perfect. All these lines that are showing up to help align it aren't really helping. That's close enough. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all of this. Let's see if we can merge that together. Group it all together is probably better than merging it. Let's move some of these things out of the way, move that out of the way, move that out of the way, move all of this out of the way, and then let's grab everything here, group it together, download it as a single frame, and we're gonna call that our brand identity summary. All right, so we'll go over here, and there we go. There's our Prana Powder brand identity. We've got our logo, we've got our colors, and we've got our typography. Okay, so that's it. We've essentially generated our brand, but if you want to take this further, we can actually keep using Lovart to generate a lot more than just the brand identity. So if you want to stay and watch for a little bit longer, I'll show you what I mean by that. So maybe you already have a product image for your brand. I'm hoping for a real product, you have actual product imagery. But let's just say that you don't. I definitely didn't for my fake brand that I generated for the Skillshare class. So let's generate a product image. So I'm gonna say, generate me the product image for the main product, the matcha powder, packaged in a premium jar, okay? All right, let's see what it came up with. And the jar is good, but they have completely messed up the logo. So I'm going to remind it what the logo is. As I said, guys, sometimes the consistency of the image generation doesn't work perfectly. So I'm going to say good, but match the logo that is already locked in for the brand. Okay, so it says it's going to create a product image that matches the logo's brand identity perfectly. Let's see if it holds up to that promise. All right, so not the best. We kind of need a white label behind the logo to give it some contrast. I'm gonna write that. Try again. We need a white or off-white label behind the logo for contrast. Use only the brand colors of, and I'll just use the exact brand colors here so that it knows specifically. Again, sometimes the AI gets it right the first time. Sometimes you need to reprompt and reprompt. All right, so that's not perfect, but let's just say we're happy with that and we're going to lock that in as our product image. Like I said, if you're operating a real brand, then you should have a real photo of your product. And the cool thing about Lovart is we can take this product image and we can put it in different environments. So we can say, create a lifestyle banner image for the hero section of my website using this product image. Okay, so after almost 3 minutes, it's still running. So let's try that again. I'll just stop this task and then I will run the same command. All right, so now we have a wide version of the product that we can put in somewhere like a hero section of our website. So I'm going to download this and it's already got a pretty good name, so I'll save that. And then let's go back over to our Shopify store over here and we can click here, upload that file. Obviously, we're going to want to change the contrast here of the text color against the background. So we'll use a different color scheme for this, the color scheme perhaps that we've already set up. Change the overlay color to something lighter and then decrease the opacity so some of our image comes through. Obviously, this is a bit of a work in progress, but you can see the principle that we can use Lovart to generate assets for our website, ideally based on real imagery. I'm just gonna make the height large here, right here, yeah. Position of the text at the top. And we can even use Lovart to help us generate website copy. So please generate me some website copy to go in the heading and paragraph section of the hero section. Right, so here you go. We can just copy that or refine that to our liking. Pure premium prana, and then we can just capture this. It's a little bit too long, but we can work with that. Put that underneath our heading, maybe remove the button for now, and maybe we have the text over to one side and we get the product image to be more on the other side. So that's something we can do as well. We could go over to here and say, create a version of this image where the product is more to the right side, leaving space for text on the left. Let's see if it can handle that. All right, I think that's going to work nicer. So let me download that and let's go over to our hero over here and replace that image with our version where it has space for the text on the left. And here you can see that lines up a lot nicer. We have a lot of bright, empty space on the left for our text. I don't think this is going to work particularly well on mobile. Okay, it works kind of okay on mobile, but we can always ask Lovart to create a mobile version and then we can insert that in our theme here. It should have an option for a mobile image. Themes usually have that. I'm not sure if this particular hero section on Horizon does that, but this is essentially how I created the brand assets from the Skillshare class from scratch. I don't actually have a real product to sell. I basically generated all the website assets and the brand identity through Lovart, and then I put that into the Shopify store. I'll show you a little preview of that right here. So if I go into my Lovart recent projects, you can see the brand is called Seance. It's another version of a matcha brand. And through Lovart, I was able to create, as we saw in this video, a similar thing. I was able to create a logo. I was able to generate a color palette, product images, our target market using the product, a product range, including the product in a jar with the whisk and the bowl, and a combo set of those products combined. It actually generated me a smoothie bowl. Not sure how I'm going to sell a smoothie bowl online, but I provided that feedback to Lovart. And I'm even able to generate flat lay images with the label on the back and some icons here based on features and benefits, some customer testimonials. At first it generated a picture of a guy, but then I told it, no, please keep it to the target market. So we got these ladies here and a whole brand story of this lady, Emma, who traveled to Japan, discovered matcha, started making it at home, and then decided to create her own matcha brand. And now we have a global community of people using this, okay, in this fictional brand. It's pretty amazing what AI can do. And then as I showed you earlier, I was able to create a card with all of our brand identity aspects in a single card. And I have that all inside this folder right here. So I've got all my brand story images that I load into the website in the Skillshare class. I have some photos of our customers for the testimonial section, the logo, the product images, the brand identity card, as I mentioned before, the hero section, and some web copy right here. These are going to be the inputs that we use in the Skillshare class. So if you'd like to check out the class, you can access it via the first link in the description of this video. In the class, I just talk about how to take your brand and use it to build a storefront on Shopify, but I didn't go into, in that particular video, using Lovart to generate the actual brand identity and the images. So I wanted to cover that in a separate video for you here for free on YouTube. So if you're interested in checking out the class, definitely check that out on Skillshare. All new users of Skillshare, I'm pretty sure, get a free trial depending on when you're watching this. So jump on that now. And as always, if you have any questions or need help with your Shopify store, leave a comment below or get in touch with me via the link in the description. Happy selling, and I'll catch you on the next video.